Sabi kong game na. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, Ma'am Likayan. We are Group 7 and our topic is about camping, campsite selection, and camp shelter.
So, good day, ma'am. I'm Craig Fernando Calino, and for our report today, I will be discussing campsite selection. So, after a whole day of trekking, you need to find yourself a safe and comfortable place to spend your night. Here are the criteria in establishing a campsite. First is that the site should have sufficient water drainage and protection from strong winds. The ground should also be covered with grass or dead leaves to provide a cushioning effect for a comfortable night rest. And lastly, the site should have a water source at a reasonable distance. And for our safety, we need to avoid camping in an area that is prone to landslide. And the site should also be free from poisonous plants and dangerous animals. A panoramic view of the area could be taken into consideration when selecting a campsite to appreciate the beauty of the nature. The probability of finding all of the above is quite remote, but more of them that you can get in one site, the better.
So, camp shelter. Mountaineers' life depends on the shelter. It is a common practice to all mountaineers to bring their own shelter in a trip to the mountain. A tent is a good investment for your protection outdoors. So, when do we say camp shelter? It is the act of staying and sleeping in an outside area for one or more days and nights, usually in a tent.
The roomie. You first have to consider how many people the tent is going to hold. You don't want a tiny, uncomfortable tent if it's going to be for two or more people. That will make the whole camping experience unpleasant. Even though some tents say they can fit four people, they don't always do it comfortably. So you should be sure before buying. The light and easy. People often associate lightweight with cheapness, but that's simply not true. Newer technologies allow for more durable and lightweight material that's more efficient than some of the older stuff. A light tent is important to have, especially if your campsite is far down a trail. You also want to make sure it's not that difficult to set up because there could be times when you're racing against the clock to get the tent up before sundown. Durable. If you're someone who goes camping often, avoid the cheap temporary fixes to your tent problems. Buy a tent for quality and durability over cheap and easy. A good tent should last more than a couple years even when it's exposed to the harshest conditions. People who I warm and cool. People who are buying tents for the first time might assume their sleeping bags will do the bulk of the work when it comes to warming themselves up, but you should consider the times you go camping most. If you're only a summer camper, you don't need to get one built for 4 seasons. But if you're thinking about going camping in the winter or colder weather, get a warm tent. Waterproof. No matter what season you go camping in, you sometimes find yourself caught in a rainstorm, which is why you need to make sure your tent can withstand water. The worst thing that could happen to your tent let in too much water and everything gets soaked. You also want to make sure there is a proper airflow so there's not too much condensation inside.
Moving on to the types of tent. Not freestanding tents need to be pegged to the ground in order to support itself. Example is a classic A type. A freestanding tents need not to be pegged in order to maintain its structure. They can also be moved around after being pitched. Examples are A-frames and domes.
Number 1, classic triangular A. Type body is strength and staked to the ground tightly with guy lines and supported by two vertical poles at each end. The A-frame is an innovation of a type classic. The body is supported by intersecting poles on each end with the central horizontal pole to keep the wall tent taut. Number 3, the tunnel-shaped tent, supported by low frames usually tapering on one end. This as an edge since it is aerodynamics but more cramped than other tent, and this is two-person. Number 4, the dome, supported by arching poles forming a dome frame. Normally, the dome has three poles forming a hexagonal floor, but the more poles a dome has, the more it can withstand strong winds per person. Usually, the lower the tent, the more stable it is and a high width, but it is less spacious inside.
Tent pitching. Okay, so always keep in mind that camping preparation is a must before you go to any camping trip. Mountaineers life defense on the shelter. It is a common practice to all mountaineers to bring their own shelter in a trip to the mountain. A tent is a good investment for your protection outdoors. The first thing that you need to do when setting up a tent is to select a location free of debris for your campsite. Now, once you've found a good area to set up a camp, it's time to unpack your things. Next is unfold the tent and lay it in the respective area. Now position the tent over the footprint with the doors facing away from the wind for optimal ventilation. Now move your things into the tent. In case of strong winds, attach extra guy lines. Now put the tent body into its bag before storing. Make the area as if no one has been there. Note that in large groups, the team leader decides where the tent would be pitched, especially in a campsite with limited spaces.
Improvised shelter. It's a must for a mountaineer to have knowledge in making an improvised tent, although different types of tent are available in the market. But sometimes things happen like broken tent as mountaineers. We are obliged to raise a temporary shelter. First, if there are two adjacent trees present, you can make an A-type tent as your improvised shelter. Tie a line connecting the trees. Second, if you have a good weather, a lean-to improvised tent is an ideal shelter for hikers. That's all. Thank you.